Welcome to Live Boldly Ministries podcast. I'm your host, Nicki White. Today we're talking with Curtis and Deanne Lewis, sharing about their book, When Life Crumbles, which tells the story of a routine procedure that left their daughter with a global brain injury and how they've dealt with that. So we'll go, first of all, and this is so difficult. Anything to do with our kids is so difficult. But can you share a bit of your story about what happened at the very beginning, I believe 6 years ago, and, kind of what's happened, through those stages and what God's been doing?
Yeah, thank you for having us, Nicki.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Natalie was born in 2015, and pretty quickly, when she was 4 months old, we found out she had a heart condition. And all along, it was just trying to sustain her until she could have this ablation procedure. So when she was 5 years old, the cardiologist talked to us and said, this is a good time for her to have it. She's healthy and strong and weighs enough, and took her in for a routine procedure on April 2nd, 2021. And it was just one of those parents' worst nightmares where it went completely wrong and perforated her heart and ended up having emergency open chest surgery. And she was in cardiac arrest long enough that it caused a global brain injury. So in the initial days, we were told that, they weren't sure she was going to be able to breathe on her own, and having to decide if we were going to sustain her life in that way and having to make hard decisions. She was in agony and pain as her body tried to adjust to the neurological damage. So she had something called storming or dystonia, which is like basically kind of watching your child be electrocuted, just totally tense and just strained in every way. You can't even hold her because her body is just writhing in pain. So they were able to sedate her and get her kind of to reset, I guess. And we started to see her responding and smiling, and it became clear that she was aware but had no physical capabilities. She couldn't move her hands, she couldn't talk, she couldn't eat, she couldn't move her legs, she couldn't even hold up her head. So that kind of started the next step of the journey, that we knew she was there and understood. She would respond sometimes by like barely squeezing your hand, and ended up bringing her home that way. And we have 3 other kiddos, so that was obviously a huge adjustment. She had been given a G-tube, so we were feeding her that way. And in September, October of that year, we found a Facebook group that was for brain injury families, and reached out to one of the families and just kind of opened up a whole new world for us of stem cells and reflex therapies and hyperbaric chamber therapy and all these different things that we've utilized to get Natalie to where she's at by God's grace. And Natalie can carry on a conversation with you now. She can laugh and tease and play with her siblings. She can stand pretty well, but she still needs help walking. She is eating all on her own, doesn't need the G-tube anymore. So it's been a miracle. We saw her stem cell doctor yesterday, and just several times he said, she's a miracle. This is a miracle. It's a testimony of God's grace and his choice to heal her and bring strength. And there's still daily struggles and trials, and as she becomes more aware, there's more emotion for her. But we're very grateful to have her personality and ability to communicate with us back, and just to enjoy a relationship with her.
I cannot imagine what it would be like and how difficult to have life suddenly change so much. And where is she in the pecking order of your kids? Is she second?
She's the second. Yeah. So Titus is our oldest, and then Natalie, and they're about 2.5 years apart. And then Haven is our next daughter. She's about 2 years from Natalie. And then we have a little guy, Colton, who's almost 3 years from Haven. So,
Okay.
yeah, she's the second oldest.
And how does that affect them, all that's happened?
Yeah, I think Titus really remembers, right?
Yeah.
He knows that anxiety. When I took her just for the stem cells in the last couple days, he's always in tears when I'm leaving, and I dropped him off at my parents, the same that I did that day right before her procedure, the day before, and it is like a flashback for him every time. So we are walking with him through that, and seeking to guide his heart, because it's confusing for him, right? We were all praying that God would protect her, and that obviously didn't happen. So how do you walk through with a little kiddo God's sovereignty, and yet we don't always get that answer of yes that we want. So I would say Titus he and Natalie have always been close. So he's definitely taken it the hardest. And then Natalie, the comprehension is just going through the roof. So she's very aware that she can't do what she did before. She gets embarrassed. She feels insecure and shy when she was always a very confident little girl. So just trying to encourage her and walk with her for her to be strong and courageous, that God's created her that way. And yet to also understand she's been through the ringer more than we have, and that's a lot for a kiddo to process and deal with from the ages of 5 to 7. She'll be 8 in August. So just so much for her to handle. Even I think her body remembers. I've talked to a friend that does family counseling, and we see it in Haven's reactions sometimes when things don't go the way that it was planned. She will kind of lash out and just lose her mind in a lot of ways. And, it's her mind remembers that feeling of anxiety, but she doesn't remember. We were watching some videos the other day of Natalie not able to talk in the hospital, and Haven said, "Why isn't she talking?" So, whether she's blocked that out, I'm not sure, but she, her brain remembers whether she realizes it or not.
Right.
And Colton turned 1 when we were in the hospital, so he doesn't remember at all.
Exactly.
He's a feral child.
Yeah, I guess it's a blessing for him that he doesn't have to remember that.
Well, writing a book was a great idea, because then thousands of people will be able to read about your story and relate some of their hardship and how God is using it and can use their hardship. And what was it that led you to write your book, When Life Crumbles?
Yeah, I don't think it was our idea at all. We were in the hospital for, I think it was 107 days at CHLA, and so during that process, the ups and downs and the craziness, we just kind of wrote on Facebook. So
almost like a digital journal, I guess.
It was a little bit like just, I think, our being able to get things out. And we, from the very get-go, I'm pretty networked, Deanne's pretty networked. When we were going into it, we had a ton of people from all my soccer teams praying for Natalie and the surgery, and obviously Deanne's dad was the senior pastor of the church that I worked at. So just a lot of people knew about the procedure, and so when things went wrong, we quickly were able to tell a lot of people. But then the process was you were just cutting and pasting to a lot of people.
Exactly.
So we were able to just kind of create a Facebook page and put it on there, and there's probably a whole other stories that we probably have of the what to do if you get an emergency, and some of the things we learned through that. And but getting a central place, a Facebook page, so you didn't have to, I mean, we were cutting and pasting for hours.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to keep people updated. So that kind of created that venue, which then made our life very open and public and obvious, obviously, but it was a way for us to share. And so much of what's in that book is kind of a combination, a correlation of what we are writing, and then a really gracious woman in our church, Pamela Caldwell, said, this is my calling, this is what I want to do. And so essentially she and 3 other ladies really helped kind of coalesce all the thoughts in the Facebook page and kind of put it in a devotional form. And
I like all the scriptures you used and
over it.
It's excellent. Very thankful for that.
It was almost like we didn't write it all at one time. We were writing it all along and we didn't realize it. And Pamela, just as she would read them and be updated, she would just print them and pull them and set them aside. And when we came home, she had this great idea. So
brilliant. That's great. I love your focus on others and what they can learn through your story, and how God's using you in other people's lives. And how have you grown as individuals and as a couple through what's happened with your family?
I think for me, it's easier for me to sit with people now and just let them, sometimes we just need people to be able to sit in our agony with us, where before I was uncomfortable with that, and you feel like you have to give them an answer, which you really don't. And I think now that I've been the opposite person in that, it's easier for me to just rest with them and even encourage them to cry out to God and say, I don't feel like this is right. What are you doing? And also reminding them, like, okay, even as we say those prayers of agonizing before the Lord, let's bring our heart back to truth, and let's remind ourselves of God's goodness, even in our agony. But it's been sweet for me to be able to be with those people as they even struggle, having other people say things that are well-intentioned but hurtful, and encouraging them to stop and wrestle with that heartache, and almost giving them permission to be in their sorrow and in their sadness for a time. Because I think a lot of times in the church, we just say, you got to keep going, you got to move on. Like, God is always good, and his goodness is in this, and yet there's still a deep tragedy, and there's a reality to that tragedy. And I think that really was revealed to me as I struggled, and I thought, Jesus knew what he was doing when he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. And yet he took the time to weep with Mary and Martha. And that picture was really beautiful to me, because I think a lot of times if we knew that we were going to fix something for our friends, we wouldn't take the time to weep with them. We would just say, come on, let me show you what I'm going to do. And yet he doesn't do that. He knew that Mary and Martha needed those moments with him, to see him weep, to see him sorrow with them. And so, when we were in the hospital and I was struggling, I was just reminded, Jesus is weeping with me. And this wasn't his first choice. His first choice was to live in perfect harmony with Natalie. And because of sin, because of brokenness in this world, that didn't end up happening. And he is saddened over what happened with Natalie, and yet he's still going to use it.
Exactly.
So that's been one of the most encouraging things for me.
Yeah, I think one of the big things for me I've learned, I think I'm a giver, and so you're always serving, you're always giving, you're always trying to bless others. And I think givers have a hard time receiving. And so
I agree with that.
For me, the huge lesson for me has been, I'm not to steal other people's joy and other people's crowns. Because I think, especially in American church, we're always so self-sufficient. Oh, I got it. I don't want to share my life. I don't want to. And yet, the church is supposed to minister to each other, or to weep with those who weep, mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice. And so the community, when one person is hurting, we're to come alongside them, and we're to hurt with them, and we're to walk with them in their pain and suffering and their joy. So just like one little story we had in this process, I've learned, if I can say yes, I say yes when someone wants to bless. And we had one person say, hey, we want to bring over dinner. So yes. And then like 20 minutes later, another person said, hey, we want to bring over dinner. And normally, like, no, we got it, right? And I was trying to work out this principle I was working out, and I said yes. And the amazing thing is I mean, we eat really early, like at 5. So one person was there at 4:30 for dinner, and the person who originally said that they were going to be there didn't get there till like 7:30. And they're just like, wow, God, like we were able to be blessed for 2 meals. We were able to bless others, because it truly is better to give than receive. And you were glorified. This is the way the church ought to be working.
And you let the body work.
To be giving and receiving. Yeah.
You got to let the body work and not quench that, And our oldest is type 1 diabetic, diagnosed when she was 6. So it's been about 30 years. And I remember that night going home and thinking, in the morning we have to give a shot, which of course we'd never done, and do a blood test. So we had to hold her down, and we're like bawling, and she's screaming. And the first couple of years she'd wake up and she'd be low or something, and she'd be like kicking and biting us and yelling at us. And we were just like at our wits' end what to do. And our pediatrician was a Christian, and I remember going to an appointment, and he said, it's a dripping faucet, and it's not ever going to go away. It's every day, needs all day long, each day. And this is where your faith comes into play. And this is, you have to find a way each day where that's not overriding your whole day and stealing your joy the whole day. You have to find ways away from it each day. And that's always stuck with me through the years, that it's like, it's
a marathon process, not a sprint.
You have to, things like what happened to you yesterday, which I was just going to ask you about. Things just keep happening, and you're growing through those things too. And our daughter, she's got, now as she's in her 30s, she's got like a foot drop thing, and like some other issues going on, and she has said, when she was little, she said, I will not have diabetes when I'm in heaven. And it's like, I can remember her saying that. She was like 8 years old or something, and so, but why don't you explain a little what happened yesterday, because I was wondering if this interview wouldn't take place today a little bit.
I know.
So are we.
Yeah.
I told Curtis last night, you might have to do this solo. Yeah, so I took her for stem cells. I flew out on Wednesday with her, and my aunt and uncle live like five minutes from where we do the stem cells, and they use Natalie's own stem cells. It's not donated or aborted stem cells. And we've done this 4 times, so I'm very thankful it didn't happen the first time. But Natalie was, going through the process. We always start by chatting with the doctor and going through everything, and he told me he was using something a little different, and Natalie was just super difficult about it yesterday. She was like exactly what you're describing, kicking, screaming. I'm like getting flustered and frustrated, not wanting to have to hold her down, but like knowing we're doing this either way, girl. Like I'm trying to help you, have an opinion here and trying to like help her relax, but it was not working. I even text Curtis like, I'm getting super frustrated. Please pray for me. And then he finishes the procedure, and all of a sudden she starts sneezing over and over and over and over again, and her eyes start getting puffy and her face is red, and she's just started having an allergic reaction to what he had changed. So thankfully they just monitored her there, and were able to give her, Benadryl to help, but she looked completely miserable after that and wasn't really talking to me, which was, kind of flashback to what's gone on before. And I was having to like carry her like a baby, which was flashback to before. I mean, she walked into the room just holding my hand, and here I am carrying her, in my arms as we walk out, and she just looked miserable and lethargic. And then we got to the airport, and she was really complaining about her leg, and they had done an injection in the leg to try and help the tension in some of her muscles. So, then I'm concerned. I mean, she was wincing and groaning in pain, and I'm sitting at the gate. I'm like, this is a nightmare. And that's what I text him. I'm like, you might have to do this interview on your own. I don't know if I can do it tomorrow. But my brother was sweetly there to pick us up when we got there. She slept on the flight, and he brought Tylenol so I could get her some Tylenol right away. But even when we got home, she was holding her leg up. She wouldn't even stand on it. She was holding it up like, a flamingo, just did not even want to straighten it. So, your mind just starts singing through all the things that could be going on. Is this something just a little pain and simple, or is there something more serious going on here? So I text my friend. I said, I definitely realized I still have rooted anxiety and a little PTSD from everything.
Well, I still cry about Jessica, and that was 30 years ago. So I'm sorry to say that might happen.
No,
but,
it's good to know. I was like, I thought I had gotten past most of this, but yesterday was a revelation that was not the case. And I called him when I got in the car, and I was like, I just need to cry for a minute.
Yeah.
I got frustrated, so now I'm upset at myself that I was frustrated. And then she got, she didn't get hurt, but it felt like she got hurt because physically she came out different than she went in.
Right.
So all of the emotions, it was a little bit of a roller coaster.
So what are your hopes for Natalie's future, and how do you hope to continue to minister to others through your hardship?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to ask Natalie, she wants to be a mommy.
Yeah.
And a doctor.
Oh, yeah.
So, obviously there's a lot of healing that has to take place for those things to happen. So I think it's just the slow walk of allowing God to do God things, and for us to use the means by which He has allowed us to do in order to kind of, have that healing, the stem cells, the hyperbaric chamber, the therapies, the cold laser therapy, all these different kind of modes that He's allowed us to be able to do, that He's using to help. So I think essentially the question is always like, okay, when do you stop? When do you stop with all these things? They're so expensive. Obviously as she quote unquote looks more normal, less people are inclined to give, that kind of stuff. So I think we've sort of decided that, when she's age appropriate, that's kind of where we want to get her to. She's 7 right now, going to be turning 8. Colton, who is going to be turning 3, walks way better than her, moves way better than her. So I would say she's less than a 3-year-old when it comes to her mobility. Her mind, I would say she's pretty.
I'd say she's age appropriate for social dynamics, especially in the home. She's very comfortable in the home. As far as being out with other people, she's more shy and timid. But as far as schoolwork, she's definitely behind. You watch her struggle through just a simple worksheet. So math and even reading is a struggle for her. We're making progress, but it's very much just, the grind of working through it and just trying to push her. You can see like her frustration. So yeah, it's hard to know, right? Because you initially were told she would just be a body in a bed and didn't expect any of this. So every gain is a huge blessing. She's just started like kind of trying to jump when she's standing there, which is super cute, just to see her. And difficult. But yeah, even yesterday she had like this little reader that she can push the buttons and it reads the book that she's flipping through. And on it seemed like every page she was, Mommy, what is this word? What is this word? It was, they whisked them away. What does that mean? And so even to see, you just pick up on things that for our other kids we just kind of take for granted. But with her, you notice, oh, she's asking really good questions. It was they intruded in on the castle. What does that mean? So good, for her, those are amazing accomplishments because she's taking something in, processing it, and communicating back out what's going on here and how do I understand what's going on.
Right. Well, we've been speaking with Curtis and Deanne Lewis, who have written the book When Life Crumbles, and it has to do with their daughter Natalie. And there's a Facebook thing that I've been following, Pray for Natalie on Facebook, and you could do that. I'm Nicki Corinne White with Live Boldly Ministries, and I just hope that you would take into consideration, reading this book. And you can find me and my books at liveboldlyministries.com, or you can email me too at NickiCorinneWhite@gmail. And thank you so much for listening to us today. And I hope that their journey to encourage others through their hardship was a blessing to you.